All right, we are live. We were just having a bit of a connection issue, so fingers crossed that has now played itself out. I have put my phone on airplane mode, so there's no Wi-Fi being played through the house. So fingers crossed we don't get interrupted. If we do, bear with us. It's technology. That's like we've experienced it for the last 3 years. But I'm very glad to have Lucy Vallis. Is it Vallis? Is that how you say it?
Vallis, yeah, that's right, Vallis.
Join me today to talk around the adult-to-adult paradigm, talk around Save the Children, her role as head of health and safety at Save the Children, and talk about her experience and what she's trying to do for their wellbeing strategy, for the future of their people there. Be really interesting conversation. I heard Lucy speak at the Watercooler Event, and just the message that Lucy is sharing and what's really important to her really resonated with me, and I think people will find it really empowering, and there'll be some great information from it. We obviously, if you were following the last event setup, I made a bit of a mistake on the day which we had set that up for. So if you haven't had a chance to watch it, I'm going to put this on YouTube and I'll share it again so people can watch it. And Lucy, obviously, I'll share that with you as well so you can share. But if you are here and you are watching, thank you for joining. Please do feel free to ask Lucy questions. They will come up in the right-hand side, and I will ask them over to Lucy, give you a thumbs up, might even show it on the screen, depending on where we are in conversation. One of the things I don't like to do is just cut Lucy off and just say there's a question here. So we'll answer them in due time. Anyway, get back to conversation. Hi, Lucy.
Hi. Nice to be here.
Thank you for being here. I'll get my introduction out of the way just so then the boring piece is done. For those who don't know me, my name is Richard Turner. I am the Director of Employees Health, which is a workplace wellbeing and coaching company which helps businesses, senior leaders and employees improve their wellbeing, performance and lifestyles of their employees. In a various different ways, and we've come quite a long way over the last 4 years, and we're hopefully doing some great things. Anyway, that's the boring bit out of the way. No more plugs. Down over to you, Lucy. Could you introduce yourself? Tell me a bit more about you.
Yeah, so my name's Lucy Vallis, and I'm the Health, Safety and Wellbeing Head of Health, Safety and Wellbeing Save the Children UK, and I have been there since January last year, so it's kind of still new, and I think it's probably going to be new until you've been in the NGO sector. Still new until you've been there 2 years. So
okay, cool. There's still learning lots, then I see.
Absolutely, yes, always learning.
Fantastic. What did you do beforehand?
So before so I'm quite old, so I'm 55, so I've got quite a long career. I started off actually after university. I wanted to be a criminologist, so I did social science and criminology at uni, and I had this kind of fantasy about being a criminologist. And I went to work at the home. Well, it was the Home Office, and it was working with Section 41 patients in maximum secure hospitals like Broadmoor, Rampton, and Ashworth. And actually, I had this kind of idea in my mind of how my career was going to go. And what happened was quite different. So I got credibility on paper. So I go to work and I'm in the hospitals from time to time. So I'm not there permanently. I'm in there from time to time. And I was working with people on the DSPD unit, which is a dangerous, severely personality disordered unit in Broadmoor Hospital, as well as in Rampton and Ashworth. And what happened was I went into the job thinking the world is generally a safe place and people are generally nice. And what happened over a course of about a year is my worldview changed to the world is not safe and people are not nice. And that was my first kind of foray into kind of, you know, well-being, because what happened was I had vicarious trauma. It was a trauma because my view on the world changed. And although it was my ambition to do it, I just wasn't the right person for that. And I had to really change my career quite quickly. So I was working in another department in the Home Office. I then went to Brussels and I worked for the European Commission on the Roadmap for Equality between Men and Women in a Time of Change. Very catchy title. And then I worked for a big NGO, an umbrella NGO called Mental Health Europe. And I ran a project on the mental health impacts of violence against women. And it was with 7 partner European countries, which was absolutely incredible and such an amazing experience. And then I did a bit of work around the sort of social sciences in the Centre for Applied Science and Technology. And then I went to work as a D&I and wellbeing lead for a big Home Office department. That led me to here, to Save the Children. And this is Save the Children fits with my own values. So I'm very happy that I'm here.
Yeah, wicked. I mean, thanks for sharing, obviously, your experience. And we were just saying beforehand, weren't we? We were saying like the experiences and the things you go through lead you to the decisions and choices you make in the roles you're in now, right? And obviously you do progress with age and experience, but like you understood and you recognized something and then took you into this path of well-being, D&I and health and safety. Which you do see, you begin to recognize things and then have those values. So can you share with me why you kind of finished that introduction with the Save the Children values fits really well with you? Can you explain that for me?
Yeah, I mean, Save the Children is a movement. And, you know, our founder, Eglantine Jebb, she established Save the Children in 1919 in order to assist children impacted by the Allied blockades and supplies to Europe. So children were starving to death. And she went on to lobby the government to end the blockade. And in 1919, it's a bit after that, actually, it was about 1923, there was a draft declaration on the rights of a child. And that forms the basis of the current UN Convention on the Rights of the Child. And the reason that it fits with my values is that it's about, we sit in the background. We are a supporting role in this much bigger performance. And you know, what we're doing is we're trying to sort of give the power back to children and the communities that we serve, you know, rather than holding the power and the control in London or in the UK. We're trying to actually give that power back. And that's what I like about Save the Children, is that they know they recognize that kind of you know, the white saviorism, and they understand that actually people need agency. You know, they need to feel that they're doing something for themselves. And that's why I feel that what we're doing in Save the Children with the Wellbeing is the right road.
Nothing, yeah. So yeah, I mean, that's going to be my next question to you. Is can you tell me a bit more about what? So you started in January 2022, so last January, or January was that 2022 or 2023?
22.
22. So you've been there for 18 months.
Yeah.
Can you tell me how that's been and what you've been up to?
Yeah, it's been great. So when I joined Save the Children, I realised that just about everyone in Save the Children UK wants to change the world and make a difference and leave the world a better place. And I wanted to help facilitate that. So facilitate committing to building a culture of openness that, you know, that through our own values, you know, accountability, ambition, collaboration, creativity and integrity, that I wanted to sort of contribute to that. And when I came in January, the wellbeing, it was off the back of COVID. And obviously that changed everything. And the wellbeing strategy was very much focused on the kind of on mental health, but it was also very parental. So, for example, staff and employees would have to go to the wellbeing team to access any kind of support. And I didn't want that. I wanted people to be able to access the support they need when they needed it, without having to come to a particular person within the organisation, and therefore, working with partnerships as opposed to kind of parent-child. And this is where this all fits in with the org of the future, which we'll talk about later.
This is the thing which really jumped out to me. First of the Watercooler, and secondly, especially when we had our first conversation, that's that power behind changing that dynamic. And you see it in management, and you see it within organisations all the time. And I've definitely experienced it. About there is this power, and the power shift of successful or higher management teams, and how you can be quite scared of actually having those conversations. I remember even as a contractor, as a personal trainer back in one of the gyms I used to work at, being worried about the conversation with the manager. And actually, this person isn't my boss, but I would still worry because that person ultimately has the power over the way I work. And that was when I listen to you talk about that, it hit up that kind of nerve of going, actually, I understand this, I've experienced this. And so this is where I was really interested in that paradigm.
Yeah. I mean, the adult, so moving away from parental paradigms of the past. I mean, most organizations have had that, where the organization essentially parents the employees. But we want to move away from that more to an adult paradigm, but to partnerships. So, for example, like delayering or, reducing the hierarchy, because in a hierarchical culture, there is not much psychological safety. If you look at those kind of culture types, we need to go towards more sort of generative culture within the organization, move away from that sort of pathological sort of culture that happens a lot in hierarchical organizations. And essentially what we needed to do was to look at ways that we can do that. And there's layers of management, which really an adult human doesn't need their life managing. A process needs management. What people need is coaching. So if we're moving away from more of a manager to more of a coach, so that you sort of delayer that kind of level of hierarchy, and that is our way of kind of building a more sort of psychologically safe culture as well, because obviously psychological safety is really critical here, and it's something that we're actively working on. And in the organisation, there are areas of the organisation which are super safe, psychologically safe, and then the areas that are not so much. And looking at psychological safety on a kind of like sliding scale, as opposed to you have it or you don't, is what we're doing. And we're working with the organisation in partnership to actually build a psychologically safe culture for people to understand what that actually means. And when we talk about having those adult conversations, we're not talking about blame. There's no blame in this kind of paradigm. There's only inquiry. So when things go wrong, there's no finger pointing. There's just inquiry. And this is a way of us, like, okay, well-being. When we think about health and well-being, or well-being specifically, we need to look at that kind of well-being at the kind of preventative point, as opposed to the kind of secondary and tertiary points. I mean, we need them and we have them, but we're really focused heavily on that sort of tertiary level, where we're by building in that culture of psychological safety, by looking at our policies and the procedures, by making everything a bit lighter and a bit more customer centric, a bit more friendly, then we can start to address those issues really at the point before they actually begin. So what we want, actually, what good looks like to me is no well-being team. What good looks like to me is well-being just being the way we are around here. This is the way we roll in this organization. We think about what we need to do at the start, rather than just pinning it on at the end. Just go, oh, well, well-being, oh, we need to think about that. But we do that before we do anything else. All our processes have well-being and D&I. That's all thought of before it actually before a process is developed or a policy.
Yeah,
does that make sense? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. My brain's kind of whirling around in different thoughts and questions as you're going along. And I think it completely makes sense. Trying to create a culture and a company which doesn't have the need to implement wellbeing because it's already implemented through conversations and and the psychological safety it has is the ultimate goal.
To me, that's what good looks like.
Yeah, it is what good looks like. But nowhere near easy, like easy said than done.
No,
Right?
and we're not there yet. And I think this is the other thing is that, you know, is we've launched our strategy. Well, we're launching our strategy, but we have our strategy. We want to keep it really simple. We want to recognize that people have, you know, that life's a big balancing act, that we've all got relationships in and outside work. We've got family, we've got financial pressures and so much more. And we've got like all different roles, both in work and out of work, and that they're all connected. So that's another point about the psychological safety, isn't it? It's about being able to be authentic in the workplace and that be okay. You know, that we're not looking at people having a bad day as, you know, some sort of catastrophic event, that we just go, you know, sometimes life is a bit rubbish and, you know, but we're all going to support each other. We're working like as partners because it's a relationship. And, you know, relationships take work. So yeah, it's not going to be an easy fix, and it's not going to be something that's going to be over. It's not a tick box. It's going to be something that we're going to do and refine and improve over time. And for me, eventually I'd like to see, you know, no D&I team, no wellbeing team. I'd like to see it's just the way we roll here. This is just the way we work.
Yeah. I love the future picture, and as you said, it does take time. Because I'm thinking unconscious bias in hierarchical kind of thought processes, mindsets, and the way people have been managed and also manage. Right, that takes time to teach and learn and shift mindsets, and so. And then obviously onboarding people correctly to make sure that they lose that unconscious bias and they feel safe and comfortable, and also managing correctly, teaching, coaching correctly. All of that's going to take time, but if you're on the journey to build that, you're in a position way better and further forward than some other companies, especially in a huge organization like Save the Children, right?
I do recognise, though, that in an organisation like ours, it's probably going to be slightly easier than in an organisation, you know, like a bank or something like that. For us, there's no, you know, when we're talking about delayering or reducing hierarchy, you know, if you're thinking of banking, you know, where somebody's, you know, looking to get sign off on a, you know, £50 million deal or something like that, then obviously that's not about, it's not about kind of, you know, there needs to be a kind of hierarchy, doesn't there? But what we're talking about is where, you know, rather than the individual look to a manager for kind of, you know, accountability, that person also has accountability, that they take personal accountability because they feel safe to do so, because they know that if things go wrong, then it's okay. That just creates an inquiry. So yeah, I do recognise that we're in a more of a privileged position, to be fair, than some organisations.
Yeah, and also there's two bits I want to say. I'm just going to add to that is like that. Similar to you, the values of the people who work for Save the Children are normally quite closely tied to their own personal values. So actually, people buy into Save the Children, whereas for some other organisations, maybe the values don't connect so much, and so maybe hard to buy in. Where was my second point going to go? I knew I was going to lose it. And you just I spoke about two different points. I should have written it down. So can you dive into, obviously when you joined, you recognised you wanted to lose the parental paradigm or parent-child paradigm, turn it to adult paradigm. You've also spoken about psychological safety. Can you just dive in to what you have done and what you're doing to create that in a bit more detail?
Yeah, so there's essentially 4 sort of strategic shifts that we're going to make in the way we look at wellbeing in the organisation, the way we're looking at wellbeing in organisations since last year. And that is to look first at prevention and early intervention. So yes, we have those kind of robust services in place in the secondary and tertiary level, you know, like we have occupational health, we have EAP, we have so much more than many. We have access to proper therapeutic support as well, which isn't limited to 6 sessions. So we use Able Futures. We have a lot going on in the organisation in that secondary and tertiary. We have mental health first aiders. We have TRIM practitioners. We have men's health champions, menopause group, neurodiversity group, fertility and baby loss group. We have all of this stuff. What we're trying to do there is to try and bring everyone together and say, it's about us as a group, not just about me as an individual. So we're going through that prevention early intervention first, like essentially creating that kind of safe working environment that's underpinned by a robust health and safety and security function, that we ensure the principles of equity and diversity inclusion are reflected across everything, that we provide a range of those holistic wellbeing initiatives, that we improve physical and mental well-being by raising awareness of it, that we contribute to an accessible, inclusive and people-focused working environment, that we look at the risk of presenteeism, that we engage with the HSE stress management standards, all of that stuff, looking at our policies and procedures and all of that stuff go into that prevention early intervention. And then the second shift is looking at agency. So this is where it's a shift from the sort of the parent-child, and it's for people to understand that taking ownership and responsibility of our own well-being enables everyone to thrive. So what we want to do is demonstrate that there's a collective benefit to our culture in Save the Children and our organisational resilience, because basically what we're doing is we're trying to do our best for children, and that's our kind of that's what we hold up high. What we're doing is we're doing this to better the lives of children all over the world, and what we want to do is demonstrate that there's a collective benefit to our culture and our organisational resilience and the performance of the organisation, that there is a benefit to learning skills of self-care, positive behaviours, good communication styles, that we want to encourage people to engage in conversations about well-being, about their own well-being, about others' well-being. And we're doing this through our promotion and building our culture of psychological safety. And that's what we're doing now, actively doing it. But we're not saying we're going to be psychologically safe in a year. We're saying this is where we want to be and this is where we're going. And we recognise that it's going to take some time. We also are focusing on partnerships. And partnerships, is for us is to establish that sort of seamless provision of care through effective collaborations with internal and external partners. So the organisation partners with the employees. We're in a partnership. We're in a relationship, and we want people to be able to look outside to our partners for support, clinically reputable support. And then the last shift is we're a lot more data informed and data led. We can't improve what we don't know, and it's really important that we, that our provisions and the things that we do in this sort of space are informed by data, and we need to ensure that they're robust and evidence based. So we're looking at that as well. So that's our strategic shifts. I'm sorry, I know I'm rambled on a bit too much.
No, I'm taking all this in and trying to make sure I understand it all. And obviously, some of this we've spoken about before, but as you said, it is very proactive. But we're having the reactive and support there.
Well, you're always going to need it, because you can't anticipate when somebody's not going to become unwell. So you're always going to need that reactive support as well. But it needs to be balanced by that prevention part, and that's like really crucial, because it doesn't matter how much you give in that secondary and tertiary level if you don't have the kind of fertile ground for that, if it's not safe environment, then whatever you do is not going to have long-lasting impact. And that's essentially what we want in the end, is to have a long-lasting impact.
Yeah, completely agree. And it's interesting, isn't it? Because you kind of have to lead with prevention, because prevention's the thing which will help people thrive, right? Teaching people to lead healthier lifestyles, and then to do that, encouraging psychological safety, add a paradigm. But then you have to underpin all of it just with reaction, because people, as you said, people will, even even like the highest performers will still get on well, whether that's sickness, whether that's poor mental health, or fertility issues or financial issues. All of these things can arise, and so having the reactive piece there to support is also super beneficial.
Well, it's absolutely essential, actually, in any organisation. Having that secondary and tertiary activities are critical. Whatever else is going on, you do actually have to have them as well. So yeah, but for us, it's the primary focus is on prevention.
Yeah, I love that. I'm a big fan of that. That's definitely down my values. But also, obviously, I want a wellbeing business. That's the side I should point to do, which we help. I've got a question for you, and I haven't told you about this question, and it just popped up as you were talking about the 4 shifts. And I don't know whether you can answer this question.
I'll try.
Probably a question on everybody's lips. So since you've started doing this, since you've started gathering data, what's been the improvement?
Yeah. Oh, well, that's actually been the improvement has been quite monumental, actually. So I'm looking at different types of data. So it's not just quantitative, it's also qualitative. We do the health and safety, the HSE's stress survey, organisational stress survey every year. And we've seen big improvements in that, especially around demand and control, peer support, relationships and role, all improved since last year. I think the biggest improvement has been in the sickness absence. So we measure employee absences, stress, anxiety and depression. And so before I arrived, it was December 21, it was 33% of all absences were due to stress, anxiety and depression. And by December 22, that was down to 19%.
Oh, wow.
Now, yeah. So I also tracked it back over a number of years because obviously very mindful that we've had COVID in that time as well. And 19% sickness absences is the lowest it's ever been.
Mm-hmm.
So something has changed. There is a shift. I'm not saying that it's going to carry on going low, 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 never go. It's not like that. Life isn't linear. It's going to go up and down. But essentially, I feel, and I know that people in the organisation feel, we are on the right track. And we've recently done the OSRA survey, like I just said, and the feedback on the provisions available for people, it was really noted, and people did really feel it. So I was also looking at the utilisation as well, because for me, online counselling through our EAP is kind of also a critical measure, because what I'd like to see is that people actually don't need it because they feel great and feel well. I realise that that's not always going to happen. But I've been looking at the metrics on that as well. And again, we are lower than we were in 2016-17 and much lower than we are almost half. The utilisation is almost half what it was during COVID. So you can see that, you know, that's a good measure as well. And how people are actually interacting with EAP has also changed. So it used to be that they would have to call the wellbeing team, would then set them up with an appointment. You know, it's all very, very sort of parental there. Now people are accessing self-help online, more and more and more people. So absolutely, we are measuring and we continue to measure. And like I said, I don't expect it to always be on the downward trajectory. I'm a realist, obviously. But yeah, that's been the overarching theme, is that people are feeling less sick. They're not going off sick.
So you mentioned their sickness. I've got so many questions, sorry. And I'll try and get them all in. So you said sickness, and the thing you've measured is sickness absence of stress, poor mental health, right? And you saw an improvement of 12%. Have you also measured then the health side of things on that? And did you see an improvement?
Yeah. Well, we saw a uptick in people with COVID. So when the COVID measures were lifted, there was obviously an uptick in people with COVID. But I haven't seen a notable uptick in any of the other health sections either.
Okay.
So from that I can there is a kind of caveat in that as well, which I'll talk about in a sec. But from that, I think I can glean that people feel better. But I'm not arrogant enough to say to think they're always going to feel better. So it's kind of, like I said, it's a job, a role, a process that we need to keep driving. The thing that I was concerned about, which we're going to look at this year and probably next year, is presenteeism as well, because are people in work that shouldn't really be in work? So we need to have a real look at that. So we're going to have a little dive around in that perhaps next year.
Yeah, fair. Interesting. Obviously, we'll keep conversations. I'd love to learn how that goes. My second question, my follow-up question to the sickness absence, and actually your data in general, and this way you might get a hurdle, might have a stumbling block. Can you put a pound sign next to it?
Well, actually, it's very interesting you should say that, because Deborah, who we work together, Deborah Peltz and I, we were looking at doing a return on investment, and it's just dropped off my radar because I've been so busy. But I have now the kind of average salary for the organisation, so I've got a calculator that I'm going to use. I think it's come from Deloitte, but I'm going to use a calculator and estimate that.
Okay.
I'll let you know.
Let me know, because that's what all of us providers and wellbeing specialists are looking for, right? Like if you can prove there's a financial benefit to improving the wellbeing of a workplace, then managers, board level, all buy in. Where are we?
Although I would say that there's like 3 reasons to invest in well-being at work. There's of course the moral case that people don't come to work to be injured, whether it's psychologically or physically. There's a financial case, of course, but there's also a legal case as well, especially around stress, because stress is actually a workplace hazard. So if you think about workplace hazards that are that we have to deal with under the health and safety legislation, trip hazards, working at height, poisons, all sorts of stuff like that. And I've just done my health and safety course and I should remember them, but I don't. But actually stress is there as well.
Yeah.
So there's a legal obligation to provide a healthy workplace for people. Yes, there is, but that also includes stress. And what we need to do is make sure that we are mitigating as far as possible, minimizing or removing, if possible, work-related stress.
Yeah.
And though you can only really do that through the kind of early intervention, the prevention part.
And the culture part.
And the culture part, yeah, definitely.
So my next question, and we might have touched on it already, and this is where the 4 shifts might have been, but your wellbeing strategy includes the Organisation of the Future program. Is that what you've spoken about here within these 4 shifts, or is that something separate?
No, so the Organisation of the Future is around this kind of delayering, reducing a hierarchy, reducing a kind of a bit more customer centric, give people a great experience. It's about people experience. And of course, those adult paradigm again. The wellbeing strategy dovetails really nicely into that, because it's basically saying that when a person is working, that they are also responsible for how they're feeling, their well-being. They're also responsible for saying what they need rather than being told what they need. And so that fits really nicely into the org of the future. The org of the future is, I would say, is for some it's fairly nebulous, but actually I really get it, and I can see how that fits in with like psychological safety and everything, because it all kind of like fits together really well. And essentially org of the future is just about moving away from the sort of a parent-child kind of organizational paradigm.
Yeah, love that. Have I got any other questions for you? We've covered a lot of the questions on here already and discussed some board bits. Is there anything else you'd like to add around the Save the Children? And maybe some of the bits. I know obviously you guys are just re-looking at your wellbeing strategy and just finished off your survey, you're putting all that together and beginning to plan for the future. What does that look like? Have you begun to figure out what that looks like at the moment?
So when people produce a strategy, they usually have a huge action plan that goes along with it. But what we're doing is keeping it really simple. So this is an approach. Mm-hmm. So when the approach is going to be sort of socialized with the organization, and then from the approach, we're going to work with groups within the organization that we work with to actually build an action plan around that. So I'm all for kind of keeping it really sort of agile and fluid, and not being kind of like drilled down to sort of one thing. I like the fact that we can kind of get some sort of flow going. So the way I see it playing out now is that we just continue with what we're doing, and we keep driving that psychological safety culture agenda and getting more teams involved in that, talking about what it actually means in real life, trying to dispelling any myths around it and helping people understand how they can, go forward in work fearlessly, for the and we need people like that in Save the Children. What we need is we need innovators, we need creativity, and if you stifle that with fear, then we're not going to do what's best for the children. So we need people to fearlessly go forward and innovate, try new things, and never fear to fail.
Yeah, that definitely resonates with me as a sports person. Never fear to fail, especially with the baseball cricket going on right now, because failure is a learning opportunity, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
And that's
if you've never failed at anything, it shows you've never tried, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And if you work in an organization where we need people to be trying new things, we're going to see failure, and it's okay. And I think our kind of ambition is that people feel that it's okay. If you think about how you feel if you failed, and I remember a boss saying to me once, "Don't bring me problems, just bring me solutions." And what actually happened is that we were terrified, because he was an angry person, terrified of taking things that were going wrong, because we were afraid of for the reaction for it. So we were terrified to do that. So essentially, we want to be in an organization where it's okay.
Yeah, I love that. I've got one more question for you, and then I'll get your 3 tips to take away. Where does the role of senior leaders and management fit into all of this?
Oh, well, they are absolutely critical in this, but it's not just about them. It's about bottom up as well. So if you can imagine, you're in an organization, say, for example, like the civil service, which is very sort of patriarchal, as we know. If you want to create a psychologically safe culture with an organization that isn't particularly psychologically safe, then you've got to be an evangelist, haven't you? I mean, you've got to be an evangelist, and it isn't easy to do that, but it is possible. So it's not just about leaders, it's also about everyone else, because people create culture, not leaders. There was a saying, isn't there? If strategy is the rules of the game, people determine how the game is played. And I think, you can have your leadership who are strategizing and saying, we need to do this and we have to do that, and you need to do this and you need to do that. But it's everybody else that determines how that's going to get played out. And so I think it's really important that it's leaders' role model. Absolutely. They need to role model. They're humans first, human beings before leaders, and then everybody else as well. And I think again, it's this partnership thing. It's about everyone bringing something.
Yeah. And as you said at the very beginning, it's around coaching. And I think that's very much part of senior leaders and managers. It's challenging your people to both do their best work, but also be their best selves and bring that performance and whatever that means to them, to do that.
Yeah, exactly.
So, as I said, I always leave this question to the very end, because hopefully we've kind of brought these answers out throughout the talks. But what are your top 3 take-home bits of advice for somebody within your role or within an organisation trying to improve the well-being of that organisation?
I would say that be brave and be fearless, and don't be afraid to challenge the status quo. You know, don't be afraid to fail. Go forward and try different and new things. Partnerships, absolutely critical. Have partnerships, and also look at the organisation and the employees as partners, as a relationship. And remember that there's different aspects of well-being. It's not just about mental health, although mental health is really important. You know, they all like intersect with each other. So you know, focus on mental health in one area, but also don't forget that there's, you know, the financial side of the financial well-being, and people are very squeezed now. That has an impact on people's mental health. You know, relationships, you know, whether people have friendships or not, you know, loneliness, I mean, massive thing, loneliness. So kind of think about all of those other things, you know, physical health, all those things that can impact, all impact each other. So take a holistic approach.
That's it. So I've got two at the moment. What's your third one?
That's three.
Be brave. What's your okay? So I've got be brave.
Partnerships.
And then, partnerships.
Partnerships. Yeah.
Partnerships. Love that. Thank you ever so much for joining me. There's some really important bits, in enlightening bits throughout this talk, which I've really enjoyed, and your approach with the 4 shifts, the prevention agencies, partnerships, and using data is could be a really useful tip for people to take away as well. And I just love your adult to adult paradigm, for people to be on the same level in regards to the way they talk to each other, because I feel like that breaks down and helps build psychology.
Exactly.
Have you ever met Hayley
Oh,
Farrell?
absolutely. Yes.
Yes, and she, I feel like you two would get on really well.
We were on a panel.
Oh, were you? Thought so. Actually, was she the person doing the panel of Watercooler?
She was. Yeah.
But yeah, she's definitely.
She's amazing.
Yeah, she's cool. Thank you again. I really enjoyed it. If people do want to find out more about you, just follow you on LinkedIn.
Follow me on LinkedIn. Yeah.
No, perfect.
I don't always get time to share stuff on there because I'm so busy, but I need to share. Or you can follow Deborah as well, Deborah Peltz.
Yeah,
she always shares a lot more.
Well, right? Yeah,
pretty active. Yeah,
and I followed both, and you're both superstars. So, thank you. In regards to the Wellbeing Chat, the next one is with Amy McEwen at the beginning of August, talking about the situation of wellbeing within workplaces, or the difficulties for some of us providers, and what we can do, and how we can bolster that. So come and join us for that one. Amy's wicked, outspoken character around wellbeing, which I think will be a very interesting conversation. Have you met Amy, Lucy?
I have. I haven't met her. I have spoken to her.
Yeah, lovely. Yeah, she is. It's actually fun. But for now, have a lovely week, and we will have a nice summer if I don't see you before at some point, and we will speak to you soon. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thanks. Bye.